Hi everyone and welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and there's a bin that I wanted to check in on today. It's kind of an oddball bin. We've been giving it all kinds of unusual, weird names, trying to indicate that it's sort of coming back from the dead or rising from the dead, or even possibly needing to repopulate using a very minimum number of individuals. So we've even at times, I believe, used the Adam and Eve reference, saying that there could be so few worms in here, it could really be down to, if we want to see any sort of a rebound of the population here, that it could really be down to just a handful of individuals, maybe just two. Hopefully that's not really the case. It's been a week since we last checked in on it, and a week is a little quicker than what we've been doing recently. We figured originally, since there's so few worms, figured let it go a couple weeks, so I let it go 15 days, and then 15 days again. More than 2 weeks between check-ins each time, and I thought that maybe this time it would make good sense just to check in after just a week and see what's going on in here. So let's get it up on the bench and see how things look inside there. So in this bin, I'm definitely operating on the assumption that the population in here is tiny, minuscule. So we'll get up really close so we can see more easily instead of having to squint at seeing maybe one or two worms. And I think last time we checked in here, it may have only been 2 worms that we spotted. And since over the past couple check-ins, the number of worm sightings in this system has been so limited, one of the viewers actually made a really good suggestion. Said, why don't you feed in one particular spot with some stuff that's almost guaranteed to draw worms, like melon or something. So I was like, you know what, that's a great idea. So in the last feeding, instead of just giving them some sort of ho-hum, humdrum food, I put a couple melon rinds in here, hoping that it would permit us some sort of a sense of how many worms we've really got in here, assuming that they would almost all of them sense something that good there and come over to it. So instead of just maybe bumping into a worm here, bumping into a worm there, and never knowing how many we have, the whole hope here was that maybe we'd be able to get them to sort of come together into one spot so we can get a better sense of how many worms we really have in here. But there's never really any guarantee, as you probably know if you have worms of your own. So maybe I'll see if I can keep track this time of how many we actually encounter. There was a worm right there that I just pulled out. The melon rind, here's a piece of it. One chunk of it is still it kind of detached over here from the soft fleshy part of the melon. So here's the tougher outer rind, but this is the gooey, meaty portion of the fruit. You would think that's the part that they'd be most drawn to. This is some other... No, this is a piece of cardboard tube. I just actually broke it. It was still a fixed loop before I broke it. So maybe going down low is where we might start to find some more worms. I don't know. So far we found 2, so at least we're tied with the last check-in. And we still have at least enough individuals in the bin that can potentially carry on the population, maybe. I don't know. But we never seem to have a lot of luck finding worms in here. And I was almost sure of it, that, you know, having those couple chunks of melon rind in there, that it would draw a crowd, if there was a crowd to be drawn. But maybe this is in fact just a sort of an affirmation that we've really got, I don't know. I wouldn't want to assume that those 2 worms are the only worms in here. I kind of have to also assume that I'm just not doing a great job finding them. But those couple little guys, I believe they were right over here. There's one of them. Put it back where the food was. I don't know where the other one is. Now I've distanced them as much as I possibly could in the bin. Instead of keeping them nice and close to each other like I just had them, now they've got to find each other. Another suggestion that was made was that maybe reducing the overall size of the habitat so that the incidence or the opportunities for them to actually meet would increase just based on the limited amount of room for them to roam around within. That seemed like a really good idea too, and it would be pretty easy just to select some choice bits of stuff out of this bin, move it all over into a smaller space, and then be done with it and hope for the best. Continue hoping for the best, but possibly increasing the chances of mating between those couple individuals. But it would also maybe require a little bit more of a thorough search through the bin, trying to make sure every single individual is found and extracted. Here I'm just kind of probing around, looking here, looking there. I mean, I guess looking in the food area would have been definitely the best chance of finding a couple, and we did. I would really just like to at least re-find the one that I left back over here and move it over along with the other guy, or at least just find any other worm that I can move over there. So I don't know, maybe I just haven't been thorough enough. Maybe I didn't really pick through the entire feeding area enough to see if I can maybe spot another worm or two. Maybe we'll just go quick exploratory through here, but it's always kind of a bummer when you go at it with high hopes and end up seeing nothing. I don't know why this bin seems to fascinate me, but as long as there's at least a couple worms still in it, it seems like the chance of things possibly recovering someday are still there. A very remote possibility at this point, I assume. What a conundrum, what to do. I think even last week I had already started setting the stage for the possibility of this bin eventually getting to the point where I can't even locate at least 2 worms. And then having to kind of admit defeat on this test and sort of kiss the whole test goodbye. But it would be nice to, here we go, 2 worms right by each other. Just what I was hoping for. Look at them, and they're so lively. I wonder if they're even red wigglers, or if they're maybe some rogue worms that got out of my other system and just made their way into here, which is always a possibility too. The whole idea here was that this would be a rebound of my original red wiggler population, but I've got Indian blue worms, and they're really skittish. They like to get out of their bins, go wandering into other bins, and take over. So I don't know. I'm always wondering if, when I'm looking inside one of my bins, whether I'm seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing in that bin, or am I actually just seeing Indian blue worms that have moved in and taken over. So during this little additional search over here, here's a 4th one we just bumped into. I don't know if one or more of them was the original 2, but it does seem like we were able to eventually come across a handful of worms. I thought I saw another one over here, and I kind of get it. I see the potential value of having a smaller space to put them into. It just worries me that I would go through the material and then at some point have to admit that what's left is theoretically worm free and maybe discarded or something, and who knows, maybe there's worms remaining in it, and I don't know, I just feel like I'd rather just try to make the best of what's here if possible. And I don't know, maybe one option is to leave all the material here but allow a portion of it to dry so that it'll just gradually on its own reduce in size, at least in terms of what they consider to be comfortable material to reside in. So maybe I'll just like cover this side up with the plastic so it maintains nice moisture level and allow some of this stuff to start drying out so that they would kind of depopulate on their own, and I wouldn't have to worry so much about leaving any behind. That might be a good idea. So why don't we do it that way when we put away, in case there are still any out here that I missed. In time they'll find that moving over to the other side is worth the effort. And you know, since we did find that melon rind with all that extra, and there's the melon rind, but where's that other piece, all that remaining fleshy part of the melon, the fruit? I don't know, maybe it was just a little too gooey to remain intact. Maybe it just started getting sort of smeared around and spread about. So maybe it's not even here anymore in the form that it was in. So it makes me wonder if it's maybe a good idea to sort of carry on with the original idea of maintaining a spot that's really kind of becoming the cozy, comfortable place to be as opposed to elsewhere in the bin, and continuing to focus on making this edge of the bin the spot where the worms would want to be and where they'd be most comfortable, and maybe allowing the rest of it to gradually dry a little bit, hopefully spurring on their movement out of it over into this side. So, I don't know, that's my latest game plan, I guess. But I'll probably, before I close up shop here, I'll probably want to dump in another little piece of melon or something. So I came down here unprepared. I thought I would just be checking things out, but I do see value in, you know, resupplying this here, even if it's not necessary. So let me get a piece of melon, and I'll be right back. This feels like it might be the smallest feeding I've ever given a worm bin. And it, you know, it almost seems like it's unnecessary, because you saw how much was left of that other piece of cantaloupe that was in there. Still had a whole bunch of that meaty portion of it remaining, so, you know, I think just because it seemed like we smeared it around and couldn't really locate it, I figured try to replace that sort of concentrated spot where there's delicious food. And I also think that the little extra moisture that it brings with it, as those chunks of melon start to thaw out and decompose, that'll probably also help make this area on this edge of the bin feel a lot more cozy. Out here, you know, we'll just start leaving it be, and, you know, not covering it for the most part, or at least not covering it with the bubble wrap. Maybe cover it a little bit with something, but give it a chance to start becoming a little bit drier, so that this edge of the bin ends up becoming the spot where it's most likely to find worms after a little while. So what do we got back here? Just a few more chunks of this and that we can use to cover up with. Here's the traditional indicator of where we fed last. Right about there somewhere. And then we got some bits and pieces of different types of paper here. But we're going to kind of set up this spot here for the recirculation of moisture under the bubble wrap. Out here, maybe we'll just recycle this last larger chunk of paper. Maybe peel off a couple of these loose little bits. They're going to fly off anyway on their own, and sort of add them as extra material here to play around in. And then this can just sort of sit out here as just a very loose little bit of a cover over the rest of the material, pretty much giving it a chance to dry a little bit as time goes on. And then the bubble wrap that had taken the entire surface and covered it and kept it nice and cozy for worm activity, we're going to kind of isolate it to only this half of the bin. And I've put it on there pretty nice and snug, fits in pretty good. So, I mean, I'm sure there's little air cavities and pockets where there's a little bit of airflow occurring, but for the most part, we've built like a little bit of a terrarium where all the moisture that's under there is going to continue recirculating nicely, and the moisture out here will be permitted to evaporate. So, that's all there is for my little, I don't even know what to call it anymore, my attempt at reviving a population of worms from a very, very small sample of that original population. We'll see how it goes. Actually, today was pretty good. Since the last time we only spotted a couple worms, and today we might have seen as many as 5 or 6. I'll treat that as a big win for today's check-in. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching.